Doing another rotten review on one of the Transformers films, it's pretty strange to me because it's tough. I already know that all of the Transformer movies, with the exception of Bumblebee and the very first movie, Transformers, I know they're going to be rotten. Everybody knows that critics just consider them to be total rotten nonsense, and I agree, and I already know I'm going to agree, and I finally saw Transformers: Age of Extinction. I have seen all the other movies. Age of Extinction was the last one on my list, and I certainly have not seen all of these Transformers movies in the order that they were released, and yet I knew what I was in for because I saw and I reviewed Transformers the first night, and I knew that that was actually considered by almost everybody out there to be a little less rotten than this one. Uh, or do I have that reversed? A little more rotten than this one? In any case, I already knew what I was in for, and in Age of Extinction, I personally consider this to be more rotten than First Night because it just got more boring. It felt more small scale to me. It felt like the humor or the attempts at humor failed more for me than they did in First Night. And also, it was a little bit weird since I had watched these out of order. It was a little bit of weirdness watching. The character, the corporate villain, who later became not so much of a villain in this film, played by Stanley Tucci. He returned in the later movie First Night and played the character of Merlin. And yeah, Merlin, that is Merlin from King Arthur and whatnot. It was a little weird all of a sudden seeing him as a corporate villain character in this film. So I don't know how people took that when they watched the films in order because they just straight up took the same actor and put him into radically different roles and different characters. And I don't know what they were thinking. In fact, to me, this whole film just came across as basically a very strange way to both market toys to kids and yet at the same time market Budweiser products to adults. And I'm assuming they're marketing those to adults and not intending to market Budweiser products to kids. However, being the cynic that I am, it wouldn't shock me if Anheuser-Busch thought that they were developing future beer consumers from these films with all the legality or illegality that that may imply. However, this was straight up just toy marketing combined with beer marketing. Very weird, not funny, more boring than the first night. And this was the movie that actually gave us Mark Wahlberg's character. Now, I saw him first in First Night, and now I see the origin of his character in this film. And I'll say that Mark Wahlberg's acting is worse in this film. It straight up came across to me as bad acting in several parts right at the beginning of this thing. And he plays a dad. And, there's this Nicola Peltz actress. I don't know her from anything else. She plays the daughter, borderline adult teenage daughter of Mark Wahlberg. It's almost not believable because they just don't look like father and daughter, their age range and whatnot. I know it's plausible, but it just doesn't look quite convincing to me. And of course, there's like a character played by Jack Raynor who is like the romance bro, boyfriend, boy racer character of Wahlberg's daughter character. And it just didn't work for me either. It just felt too fake and too like created for the sake of having something going on. They just were out of any better ideas at this point. And I'll say this: the first night, although I consider it a rotten film and overly long, just like this one's overly long, it felt less boring to me. There was more crazy, zany stuff put into it, particularly Anthony Hopkins and his sidekick Transformers Butler. That was at least something different and something interesting, and I got some laughs out of that. This one just, they ran out of ideas, and this became like a boy racer movie. stereotypes of mechanics, garage mechanics, and boy racers, and all that that entails. And it just wasn't exciting. And they took this to China, straight up into Hong Kong, and maybe some of it was supposed to be in South Korea, but a large chunk of it was in Hong Kong, and that didn't work for me either. There wasn't anything exciting to be found there. So let's get right into the audience reviews. And what I really want to know is what makes this Transformers movie rotten in a particular, how does it own its own rottenness, so to speak? Because these are all blending together for me. They're just like a big pool of rottenness. Michael Bay's most rotten hits all just lumped onto the same album, so to speak. So it just blurs together in my mind. So I'm just going to try to figure out in this rotten review what makes this film, Transformers Age of Extinction, rotten in its own unique ways. So let's see if we can find any clues in the audience reviews. It has a 51% on the audience score, 223,000 plus audience reviews, 18% on the tomato meter. I guess I should remind you again that I pretty much agree with the tomato meter on this one. But let's look into those that vast number of audience reviews and see what they have to say. I'm not going to entertain anything above a 3-star review because that's not what we're here for. So let's scroll down, and we have our first 3-star review, January 5, 2020, making it within the last 3 weeks. Mark Wahlberg was good, but Michael Bay pretty much ruined this brand. Yeah, well, that depends, like I've said before. Did he ruin it, or did he accomplish his mission? Because it seems like his mission was to sell toys for Hasbro and also sell beer for Budweiser, and it seems like he has actually accomplished that mission. But, I mean, if you mean making a film that's not rotten, yeah, he hasn't done that, certainly. We can go back to the original Transformers, the first one of all of them. That is certainly not rotten. It's very enjoyable. But ever since then, yeah, it's just been all about marketing toys and beer. So I would say that's still mission accomplished. That's not a failure, because I think that's what he intended to do. Half a star, December 24, 2019. This movie is a mess, and I would highly recommend anyone to avoid it. 1 star, every Transformers gets worse and worse. Age of Extinction is a huge piece of crap. It's so stupid and dumb. Well, that's every single Transformers, really. That's why I want to find something different about this one. What makes people hate this, say, more than they hate the first night? I don't know if we're going to find that answer, but I really want to, because it's all blurring together for me. 1.5 star. This movie's slow-paced scenes and inconsiderable plot to the audience, topped with excessive action scenes, will leave you to wonder as to whether it was a necessity to watch it. Very long and loud. Would recommend it to those who are fans of the franchise, but not to those who don't like tedious movies. Well, actually, no, I would rather recommend First Night, because it did a lot of stuff different, and it had visuals that were different. And yes, it was long and boring to sit through for me, but this one felt more small scale, and it even had like a video game type boss battle at the end, and a lot of stuff that was more nonsensical than in the First Night. I mean, I couldn't explain it even by my imagination. I couldn't fill in what the reasoning was. For example, at the end of this, you had a gigantic floating ship, an ancient Transformers floating ship that was floating over Hong Kong, mostly over Hong Kong, and it had some kind of magnetic property where a magnetic field would switch on and off, and it would suck up cars and vehicles and people and then drop them down from great heights. And it was never explained what the point of that was. Like, it was some kind of function of the ship, but it wasn't shown to be some kind of weapon. It was just like something the ship did as it floated along. And I don't know, maybe they were trying to copy that effect out of that gravitational effect out of Independence Day Resurgence. It kind of reminded me of that. Maybe it was just a way to have that same effect copied into the franchise of Transformers. That may be what it was, but it just like came across to me as totally illogical. Why did you need this ship to do all this weird stuff? It just did it to look cool, I guess. Stuff like that was in the movie, and there was there was a corporate plot to this. There were no good guys on the human side except for Wahlberg and his sidekicks. There was a team of corporate villains that wanted to reverse engineer Transformers and make their own Transformers to sell to the military. And then there were straight up military bad guys, CIA bad guys. It didn't really say which. It had kind of a quasi CIA, quasi military group that was the bad guys, and they were villains. And so, this movie didn't feature your Josh Duhamel crew of military good guys. These were just all straight up bad guy characters on the role of the military and CIA. And that was a little bit different from the other Transformers films, but I don't think that was a flaw. I just think it was kind of a different angle. I was expecting to see just straight up more of Josh Duhamel and his do-gooder, military jargoned out, good guy, army, action, whatever heroes. But this movie actually left them totally out and replaced them with corporate CIA villains. And it continued on from, it made a lot of references to Chicago being destroyed in Transformers: The Dark of the Moon. And then it straight up destroyed Chicago again, and destroyed a lot of Hong Kong again. And it wasn't stuff that we hadn't seen before, but that's also why I'll say that this is worse than The Dark Knight, because we've seen all this kind of disaster stuff before. At least The Dark Knight gave you like floating land masses and etc. But in any case, let's move on. Half a star, December 2019. Just rotten, bad acting, and another Bayformers with a bad story and firework explosions. Well, the CGI actually looked good, just like all the other ones. And this one is the first one to introduce your Transformer Dinobots or dinosaur Transformers. It doesn't have any logic to it, and it's completely nonsensical and a plot hole as to how the dinosaur robots are brought on board the good guys team. But I had that on my list of things, and I have a list of things that don't make sense in the plot, and I'm not sure if I want to get through those or not, because I've gone through all these types of plot holes on all the other Transformers movies before, and it's really getting old, and it's even boring me. So I'm just not going to quite go into my list of plot holes, because they're very similar to all the other plot holes in the other movies. I just want to find out what makes this uniquely rotten, as it were. Half a star, longest movie ever. Also, worst movie ever. How does this utterly spoiled franchise persist? Again, it's just beer and toy sales, guaranteed. Half a star, an unnecessary sequel. From the second movie, the story is becoming more and more forced. The main people are changed again, full of the same action scenes as the other movies, nothing new. A very simple story without memorable characters. The story becomes increasingly ridiculous until it reaches the point of showing dinosaurs only because of the fan service they generate. Yeah, and the toy sales. If you go into the toy section in your preferred outlet, you will find among the other Transformer robots, you will find the dinosaur versions. That's what this movie was all about. Half a star, worst movie I've ever seen. No effort, creativity, or passion at all. It questions my intelligence by thinking I'm dumb, but I saw this movie for the bland, unoriginal cash grab it really is. It can't get any worse than this. Oh no, it can get worse than this. The Dark Knight got worse in some ways, but again, I'm going to say this is worse for me than The Dark Knight because, like this reviewer said, no creativity or passion in this one, nothing new that you haven't seen before. Yes, the dinosaurs, but they weren't the main part of this. They were more like just at the end in some of the battle sequences. Most of this was just straight up generic stuff that you saw in this Transformers film. Now, when you went into the first night, you actually saw unique stuff you hadn't seen before. I mean, it's completely dumb. It still insults our intelligence, but at least it had some comedy and it was stuff we hadn't seen before. This one, yeah, I'll have to agree with the reviewer. Nothing new really in this one. Very generic, small scale feeling. I mean, it's trying to be epic, but you're watching this boss battle in Hong Kong and it just doesn't feel epic. It feels small scale. Even the scene when we're on this ancient ship, the ancient ship doesn't seem that original inside. It's very generic and dull looking, and it feels very small scale, the action that takes place in this alien ship. And that's contrasting with the first night. In the first night, it actually felt big scale. I mean, it was still dumb and it was still overlong, but it actually felt bigger and more epic than this. This was very lacking in passion, is definitely the right word. Half a star, so bad, the worst lines, giant robots riding giant robot dinosaurs, just incredibly bad, and hours long. Yeah, they're all hours and hours long now, 2 hours and 37 minutes. It's hard to sit through this. It got worse in the first night. That one I just, my God, I really did need to fast forward through sections of the action because it was just that bad. This one's pretty much that bad too. It's a toss up on just which one's the worst to sit through, but considering the running time, it's like if you can't sell beer and toys in 2 hours and 37 minutes, then I don't know what to tell you, because it only takes 37 seconds to actually sell beer in the real world. But let's move on. 1 star. This movie is very long. It is boring. Mark Wahlberg plays Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, with bad lines. The Transformer designs are awful, and you can tell they cut corners with the changes made to transformations. This film is bad, like very bad. It's boring, drawn out, and just feels like a complete and utter cash grab. Even more so than the last two. Don't waste your time. Yeah, you can tell that the transformations weren't as spectacular and detailed as they were in some of the other movies. Even in The Last Night, the transformations of the same robots in a lot of cases are better. They're more detailed. They look better. In this one, they don't look bad. The CGI is still good quality. But yeah, you can tell that they tried to make it simpler and they tried to have the camera kind of not show some of it so that, I don't know, maybe to save money. To say, or maybe it's just straight up running time. I mean, this thing's already 2 hours and 37 minutes long. So I don't know. It's debatable, but yeah, the CGI, while it's good, definitely they made the transformations a little simpler. But it's got plot problems. I mean, let's just get into some of the plot problems. They're nothing worse than the other Transformers movies, but let's just say, oh well, there is a line in this film right at the beginning, before we see any Transformers, before Mark Wahlberg discovers he's got a Transformers in the form of a semi-truck. Yeah, he actually, there's some joking between characters about, when they go into a movie theater, Mark Wahlberg goes into a movie theater, an old abandoned movie theater in Chicago, and when he walks in there, there's some dialogue that makes fun of movies. In fact, there's a line where one character remarks to another about sequels and remakes and crap movies. That's straight up his line. Well, it's a little bit longer than that, but that's what he's saying. And they straight up make fun of this whole franchise and all the sequels and remakes and crap movies. And I got a laugh out of that, and I jotted it down because that was like your clue how this was all going to go. And yeah, at least Michael Bay knows what he's doing, and that's why I think it's very deliberate on his part to do these types of movies. He's not trying to make them good or not rotten. He's just trying to sell beer and toys, and that's what his job is. And he makes fun of that himself with that line. Now, as far as the plot hole, the first one that popped up was, how does nobody in a movie theater in the middle of Chicago notice that there is a semi-truck parked inside? Yeah, the owner of the theater, it's Mark Wahlberg that goes in there and looks around through the junk and discovers there's a semi truck parked inside the theater, and it looks like it's been sitting there in the dust for years. And the movie theater's owner or the property manager, he's all surprised. Oh, wow, how'd that get here? How come nobody noticed that before? Yeah, exactly. How do you not notice that a semi truck is parked in your movie theater? Yeah, that would just go unnoticed, I'm sure, just because of how dusty and dirty it is in there. That was the first thing I wrote down. Plot-wise, the second plot problem, yeah, the Autobots are already, okay, when they go to the villain's factory, they kind of infiltrate the villain's factory where he is trying to scrap Autobots and Transformers and make his own Transformers for military sale. Well, they infiltrate his factory, and they do this once, and then they have to like ride away to another location and then come back and re-invade the factory a few minutes later. And there's no logic to this. Transformers and the Mark Wahlberg and his side characters, they're going from point A to B in this movie. Several times they go from point A to B for no actual logical reason other than you can put in some cool car driving scenes on the road between, and you can put in some CGI and some epic sounding music when they're traveling from point A to B. There's no reason for this. Like at one part, this ancient alien ship, it decides, the bad guy Transformer decides he's had enough of Earth and he's going to take off into outer space. And instead of just doing that, he has to first slowly, very slowly float his whole ship from out across the countryside into the city of Chicago. Then he can activate his engines to go off into space. For what purpose in the plot? There is no purpose. There is no logic to it. It's just so that you can see this long, drawn-out sequence of the ship floating into Chicago just for the visuals. A lot of stuff's just done for the visuals, but there's no logic to it whatsoever, and it further pads the running time and makes it hard to sit through. And in that regard, it makes it worse than Transformers the First Night, because at least in Transformers the First Night, all this long drawn out stuff that was happening had logical reasons. There was more of a logic to it. And this one, no, it's just to have people move around into positions to look cool before they can do whatever they're supposed to do. No logic to it at all. It's just for visuals, and that's, like, again, like another reviewer said, that's showing just straight up lack of passion, lack of creativity. A lot of the other Transformers movies, as dumb as they were, they had a lot of creativity put into it. This one, I'm sorry, it just totally failed. It's like they had a total lack of imagination and just cobbled this together as a cash grab. And so, yes, this does feel very much more like a cash grab than the other very dumb and boring and drawn out Transformers films. So I'm going to say that this one is unique in that regard. But they're all dumb. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing smart about any of these damn things. Half a star, August 1, 2019. Transformers 4 makes no sense. It's loud and poorly acted with bad humor. It's like Bay was blackmailed into directing. Well, he's forced into it. They tell him he's probably got a quota of Budweiser ads he has to get in there, and a quota of toy sales for new models of toys, and new box sets of Transformers merchandise that are out there, and as long as he gets those into place, he's good to go. That's what this felt like. Not blackmail, that's just his contract. That's what he has to do, his job. Plot problems, let's see. Yeah, why did there's this villainous corporation, they're trying to make their own versions of Transformers that they can control. But the only problem is there's a big plot hole here. Why did they pick to make models of Transformers that have to drive on the ground and as vehicles like a lot of our other Transformers when they have access to flying Transformers of all different types? But did they design flying Transformers that would have a lot more versatility as weapons? Nope. They just straight up decided to make ones that have to transform into cars. Why would you do that? If you wanted to create a Transformer for the military, you would definitely want one that can transform into a jet or a helicopter or something like that. But nope, they just needed them to be these pointless ground vehicles that have to transform into sports cars like Lamborghinis and etc. That makes no damn sense. That's a plot problem. And again, that's why I'm going to say this movie's just as dumb as all the others. The other ones have equally dumb things, but what's unique about this one, right? Yeah, let's see, another plot problem. The ship, I said the ship floating around from point A to B for no reason, just for the visuals. Yeah, there's kind of like a countdown timer inside the ship when Wahlberg and his crew are inside this alien ship. They have 7 minutes until the ship activates its jump drives or whatever so it can take off into orbit. But of course, they spend like 20 minutes screwing around doing other stuff in there. I watched at the time, so it's a complete fail. They just don't, they put these time deadlines into the movie and then just, I guess the audience isn't supposed to mention or notice that we've passed 7 minutes long ago, and the characters aren't concerned. If you have 7 minutes to rescue somebody in this giant alien ship, and then you just stop what you're doing and divert into looking at how cool some weapons are on the wall, knowing that you have 7 minutes to save your daughter. But now to screw your daughter, just take 20 minutes screwing around with some weapons in there. That's come on now. Even in a Transformers movie, you have to give me something logical. That's just completely stupid. Um, then there's a big plot problem where this corporate villain played by Stanley Tucci, he's a villain straight up from the beginning of this film. He's a corporate villain in every way. Then all of a sudden later in the movie, when we're in Hong Kong, when we're closer to the final act of the film, he becomes a sympathetic character and a bumbler and a comedian, and he's supposed to be likable to us. All of a sudden, where he was an unlikable villain and ruthless before, had no regard for human life, all of a sudden he is this likable character we're supposed to go along with, and he's got a romantic interest with this Chinese actress now, all of a sudden, that we're supposed to be invested in. It is completely ridiculous. Like, the movie needs to make up its mind. Is this a villain, or is this somebody we're supposed to go along with a romance and become like we're supposed to sympathize with him now and his romantic interest with this Chinese lady who should also be a villain? I don't know what the hell's going on with that. It was weird. 1.5 stars. Megatron has died and come back more times than Tupac. Yeah, once again, Megatron comes back. It's revealed that all along he has been deceiving the corporate villain, and Megatron has been rebuilding himself using the greed and problems that the corporate villain has in trying to create his Transformers for sale. Megatron has been behind it the whole time, carefully constructing himself, and at the end of the movie, he's back, all in back. In fact, not only is Megatron back, but he has designed himself to be even better than he was before. He's even a better version of himself, an upgraded Megatron, if you will, and he is to kind of be left there at the end to vow to come back and fight another day. Yeah, it's okay for an 8-year-old, I guess, but as an adult, you're just like, wow, gee, he's back again. I'm so impressed. Megatron is back. 1 star, July 10, 2019. I don't care about the money. I care about the entertainment, but I don't care how much entertainment this billion-dollar flick got. Yeah, I'm going to agree on that. I don't care about the money either. When I go into a movie, or even if I watch it on DirecTV, even if I see it for free, I really care about the entertainment too. There's a point at which, you're just so worried about selling Budweiser and toys at the same time, as weird as that is, that you just don't give a shit if people are entertained. You just wanted to put out a giant car commercial in there too while you're at it, which is what this film does. Giant car commercial along with Budweiser and toys. So its marketing is all over the place. It's PG-13, but I'm not sure who it's targeting. But this one in particular, the comments I read on it, it seems to have failed a lot worse than the others because, the first night was at least funny. It was weirder, and this one is just a whole lot of boredom with those commercials. 3 stars. Well, let's read this. 3 stars from July 3rd, 2019. His Transformers movie has a bad plot. Unlike his predecessors, this one fails to tell a history. The plot is so bad that they also forgot details sold in the first 3. It feels like a bad soft reboot, a popcorn movie to see only one time. The only thing that saves this movie is the Dinobot scenes. The rest is just a mess of action sequences with bad writing. Collapse. You could say that about the others too. I mean, straight up you could. Not the 3 stars though. I think this one, I don't even know if I mentioned my star rating. My star rating on this one is like 1 star. I'll say 1 star because there's still effort put into the visuals in a lot of areas, even though there's nothing new about them. I'll give it 1 star for that, 1 star. 1.5 stars, July 3rd, 2019. I don't know if it was me or the movie, but man, the whole subplot with the Dinobots and how Cybertronians were there during the dinosaur times could have been cut out completely. And the part with the seed, forgot what it does, could care less at this point. The concept of the government making their own Transformers was a cool idea, but the whole movie is just half-baked overall. I'll never forget how awkward it was seeing people clap after the movie ended and the credits began to roll. Yeah, I would imagine a lot of these people that love these movies, they always clap in the theater. It reminds me of people that always clap after their airplane lands. They fly on some unremarkable, textbook, boring flight from, say, Austin to Denver. And when the plane lands and nothing unusual happened about it at all, there's always some people sitting there that have to clap for some reason, like the pilot gives a fuck. I mean, that's how I feel about people that clap in movies like this. They're the same people, most likely. They saw Dinobots and they saw some commercials for beer, and like they're giving the director applause for that. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I'll agree with that. It's ridiculous. The plot, there's a couple of plots here. One, you've got corporate villains attempting to clone Transformers for their own nefarious, greedy purposes. That's actually pretty cool. That's a cool idea. And then at the same time, you have this confusing plot about ancient. It's never really explained how Transformers are just wandering around on prehistoric Earth and exterminating dinosaurs. For whatever reason, it's never really explained why. It's never explained what this ancient Transformer character is doing here in the first place or what his motives are. He's just. This ancient Transformer character called Lockdown. I don't know where that name comes from or what it's supposed to mean, but he's been on Earth for millions of years, and he's teamed up with the corporate villains, and he's supposedly secretly working for some outer space intelligence that's beyond everything we've seen before, and he just wants to destroy all the Autobots and the Decepticons because he's just tired of them causing problems on Earth. But it's never explained why he's on Earth in the first place or who he's working for. It's very strange. And it doesn't really connect to the first night either. It really doesn't. Because I remember the first night I saw that in recent times, and it doesn't completely, it's not explained in the first night either. And again, the first night causes problems with this one because all this stuff that's going on in this movie, where's Anthony Hopkins and his Order of Knights from the Round Table? Where are they? They're just like snoozing during this movie. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Let's move on. 2.5 stars. Feels like it drags on and is hard to watch again. It has its worthy, entertaining moments, though. That applies to every Transformers film, just about, except for the first one. 3 stars, May 26, 2019. After the small improvement of Dark of the Moon, I was expecting a lot from this film. The film has some impressive action sequences and an attempt at a truly good sequel. It suffers from long, overlong action sequences that will bore you. Again, most all of them do, except for the first one. Every damn Transformers movie except for the first one and Bumblebee has these overlong, drawn-out sequences that you just want to fast forward through. They've all been like that, and it's just to sell toys and get some Budweiser products in there and car products. You got to see a new version of a Camaro, and you have to see some other type of vehicles in there. And you have to see, in this one, you have to see a rally racer vehicle. I don't know why, but let's mention that in the plot too. One of the plot holes in this film, there is like a rally racing car. It's like a little Chevy, like something you would see out of Fast and Furious, but not even that exciting. And it's like a little rally racer toy type car. That's what I call it, like a toy car. And it is shown to be it's fast enough and quick enough to outrun military helicopters and lose them. Yeah, that's believable. Forget about it, outrunning and losing Transformers, but it actually outruns and loses military helicopters. That's completely believable. Yeah, boy racers can do that. It's just easy. But again, every movie has these stupid plot things in it. Problems, big plot problems. 2.5 stars, May 25, 2019. It suffers a bit of writer's block at the end, and it feels poorly handled as a film. Yeah, it's very boring at the end. You just have your boss battle, and you have a whole lot of nonsense going on in Hong Kong, and a gigantic spaceship sucking vehicles up and then dropping them, and just like out of Independence Day Resurgence or whatnot. Very boring. Let's move on to yet another page, another exciting page of reviews. 1 star, May 17. For me, the only thing worth watching is the Dinobots. That's it. 1.5 stars, May 5. We've seen a hell of a lot better in 2.75 hours. Endgame. This movie should be snapped out of existence partially. Yeah, if you're going to compare this to any of the Avengers movies, there's nothing boring about any of the Avengers movies. Yeah, some of them don't age that well. Some of them have corny things in them that look cornier as time goes on. But none of them can be said to be boring. No, I'm sorry, none of them were. Almost every one of these Transformers films becomes boring, though. 3 stars, April 24, 2019. It has some very entertaining action sequences and some very badass moments from Optimus Prime, but the unnecessary 3-hour runtime and lack of plot and characters really bog it down. Again, that applies to all the other Transformer films too. Half a star, boring, excessively long and loud. You may not even survive 2 acts of this. Half a star, Age of Extinction is without a doubt the worst Transformers movie so far. This bloated 2 hours and 45 minutes movie is filled with noise, action, explosions, and CGI, but the plot and characters are pretty much non-existent. Like previous Transformers movies, they focus too much on the human characters, which would be fine if any of them were interesting. Apart from returning characters, Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, none of the new Transformers are particularly memorable. I'll take your word on that. To me, as an adult, nothing in Transformers is memorable. Beyond, sometimes they really focus on a girl in tight pants or tight shorts. Every movie does that. This one does too. Nothing else is memorable but how much I was bored, and that's coming from somebody that's an adult. So, but I'll take your word for the fact that this is worse than the others. 1.5 stars. This movie's mistakes are so avoidable that it comes very weird that someone would release a movie like this. No, they have to put those commercials out there. Half a star, tasteless even for Michael Bay. No, the others are just as tasteless. This one is just boring because they just didn't have any creativity here to mask all the other flaws that are there in all the other movies. 2.5 stars. Age of Extinction is just another bloated CGI fest with little to no regard for character development and plot coherency. No way in hell can this be considered an improvement of its messy predecessor, Dark of the Moon. Dark of the Moon was no great thing either. I don't want to sit through it, and I know I did once or twice to try to get through it. It probably took me 2 times to get through Dark of the Moon, and I don't even remember where it went. I know the city of Chicago was all blown up, and that's what you saw in this movie too. This one's no better than any of that. What else do I have in my plot problems? Again, these plot problems aren't anything that don't exist in all the other movies. Yeah, it's dumb how the dinosaurs are just convinced by Optimus Prime to join the Autobots. He just gives them a stupid speech about how, come on, get on my team, guys, and the Dinobots just join him, despite the fact that they're supposed to be working for the bad Transformer, but they just like Optimus Prime's speech and decide to join him. And even the speech is boring to listen to. It makes no damn sense. Plot, yeah, weird choice for the boss battle. You get some kind of music video choice on the song selection, and it feels like you're actually in some kind of over drawn out music video. It's kind of weird, you know. Most of it's just that boring, trying really hard to be epic Transformer repetitive crap that goes on during most of it. But at the end of this, in a very small scale boss battle, you have like some kind of attempt at making a music video, and it doesn't work, and the music's kind of weird, and I don't recognize the music, and it doesn't feel like it matches the action. It felt very weird to me. I'm not going to mess with more things on my list because, like I said, there's nothing on my list of plot problems that aren't in the other films. In fact, the other films have a lot worse stuff going on, like you just magically teleport to different places for no reason. This one doesn't do that so much. It's just a whole lot of lack of imagination on this one. 51% on the audience score. Anything between 40 and 50% would be fair. The tomato meter, I agree with that more than anything else. There's just very little redeemable here. There was a whole lot more humor that actually worked, as dumb as it was, in the next movie, the last one called The First Night. And if you really are of the mind to sit through something this long and dumb, pick The First Night over this one. This one's worse, in my opinion. And I will see you again on another, hopefully more exciting episode of Rotten Reviews.